How can the words of a single man, spoken over 2.5 millennia ago, still dictate the rhythms of family life, the intricacies of business deals, and the very structure of power in a 21st century superpower? When we hear the name Confucius, we often picture a serene bearded sage offering cryptic proverbs. But this simplistic image betrays the reality of a true social architect. A man who witnessed a world collapsing into chaos and dared to design a blueprint for its reconstruction. He didn't just create a philosophy, engineered a code, a cultural operating system for the mind and society of China. This code has proven so profound, so resilient, that it has survived dynasties, weathered revolutions, and navigated the turbulent waters of modernity. In this investigation, we will decipher this secret code and reveal how it continues, silently, to govern China to this day. Chapter 1. The architect of harmony. Our story begins not in a tranquil monastery, but in a fractured and bleeding world. This was China's spring and autumn period, a time of profound crisis. The authority of the once glorious Zhou dynasty had crumbled, leaving a power vacuum filled by over 100 warring states. Alliances were made and broken in the same breath. Armies clashed in brutal campaigns. Rulers were assassinated by their own kin. It was an era where the old traditions had lost their meaning and moral order had evaporated. Out of this crucible of chaos, 100 schools of thought emerged, each offering a different diagnosis and cure for society's ills. Some, like the legalists, argued for absolute power and harsh laws. Others, the Taoists, advocated for a retreat from society into the harmony of nature. And then there was Confucius, or Master Kong, the man the West would come to know as Confucius. Born in the small state of Lu to a family of declining aristocratic status, he was a man obsessed. From a young age, he was fascinated by the rituals, the music, and the literature of the early Zhou dynasty, a time he viewed as a golden age of stability and virtue. He believed society's sickness wasn't military or economic, but fundamentally moral. The mandate of heaven, the divine right to rule, had been lost because the rulers had lost their virtue. His radical solution was not to innovate, but to restore. He sought to become an architect of souls, rebuilding society from its very foundation, the character of the individual. Chapter 2. Deciphering the Code. Ren Li and Zhou Confucius's code was not a set of divine commandments, but a practical, human-centric framework for living. It rested on 3 interconnected pillars. The first and most important is Ren, often translated as benevolence or humaneness. But it is much deeper. Ren is the very essence of being human, the innate capacity for compassion and empathy that connects us all. Confucius believed that Ren was the root of all virtue, and it was nurtured through conscious practice within the 5 relationships: the love between a father and son, the duty between a ruler and subject, the distinction between a husband and wife, the precedence of an older brother over a younger, and the trust between friends. Central to Ren is the concept of shu, or reciprocity, perfectly summarized in his negative golden rule: do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself. It was a simple, yet profound guide for all human interaction. The second pillar is Li. If Ren is the internal feeling of virtue, Li is its external expression. Li translates to ritual, propriety, or etiquette. It is the grammar of social life. It dictates the proper way to conduct oneself in every conceivable situation. How to speak to a superior, how to greet a guest, the correct ceremonies for a wedding or a funeral, even the type of music that should be played to inspire harmony. For Confucius, these rituals were not empty gestures. They were the essential choreography that trained individuals in the practice of Ren, creating a predictable, stable, and respectful social order. Li was the framework that made society work. The final, foundational pillar is Xiao, or filial piety. This is the bedrock of the entire system. Xiao is the profound respect, love, and sense of duty a child owes to their parents. For Confucius, the family was the microcosm of the state, was the first training ground for virtue. If a man could not show proper respect and care for his own elders, how could he possibly be a loyal minister, a trustworthy friend, or a benevolent official. This reverence was a lifelong duty, extending even beyond death through ancestral rites. It was through the practice of Xiao that the individual learned the deference and respect for authority that would make them a good citizen. These three pillars are in. Li and Xiao formed the basic algorithm of the Confucian Code, an internal sense of compassion expressed through a shared social grammar, first learned in the unquestioning loyalty of the family. What do you think of this foundation for a society? Is this a blueprint for harmony or a recipe for repression? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Chapter 3. The Failure of the Master. The success of the idea armed with this powerful code, Confucius embarked on his life's mission to find a ruler who would listen. For 13 years, he journeyed through the warring states of China, accompanied by a small, loyal band of disciples. He offered his counsel to dukes and princes, hoping to put his philosophy into practice and restore order to the world. Yet court after court, he was met with polite interest at best, and outright rejection or ridicule at worst. Rulers were more interested in military power and cunning strategy than in his teachings on moral virtue and ritual propriety. This period of wandering was fraught with hardship. At one point, he and his followers were stranded and starving. But Confucius remained calm, playing his zither and discussing his teachings. He faced constant disappointment and the very real danger of political intrigue. He was, by any conventional measure of his time, a political failure. He never achieved the high office he sought. He never saw his grand vision implemented. He returned to his home state of Lu in his old age, a respected teacher, but a defeated political reformer. He died believing his life's work had largely been in vain. And yet, this is the great irony of his story. His personal failure was the key to his philosophy's ultimate success, because his ideas were not tied to the fortunes of any single state. They were free to spread. The true vessels of his code were not the dukes and princes, but his disciples. These men, like the devoted Yan Hui and the eloquent Zigong, had memorized his every word. After his death, they compiled his conversations, his aphorisms, and his lessons into a book that would become one of the most influential in human history, the Analects. The master had failed, but his idea, now codified, had just begun its journey. Thank you for staying with us through this deep dive into the life and philosophy of Confucius. You have witnessed the struggles of the man and the birth of his code. But the most incredible part of the story is yet to come, how this failed idea would go on to stage silent conquest of an entire civilization. Chapter 4. The Silent Conquest of the Empire Centuries. Act. China was unified for the first time, not by a benevolent sage king, but by the brutal and ruthlessly efficient first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. His dynasty embraced legalism, a philosophy that stood in stark opposition to everything Confucius taught. Books were burned and scholars were executed. It seemed as though the Confucian Code was destined for the ash heap of history. But the Qin dynasty's cruelty was its undoing, and it collapsed quickly. The dynasty that rose from its ashes, the Han, needed a new, more enduring ideology to govern its vast empire. They found it in the teachings of the long-dead master from Lu. Emperor Wu of Han made a historic decision. He declared Confucianism the official state philosophy. But the true masterstroke was the creation of the imperial examination system. This was the mechanism that would hardwire the Confucian Code into the DNA of Chinese governance for the next 2,000 years. It was a grueling, multi-tiered series of examinations. To pass, candidates had to demonstrate absolute mastery of the Confucian classics. Their entire education, from childhood, was dedicated to this single goal. The result was a new ruling class, a scholar gentry of officials who owed their position not to noble birth or military might, but to their knowledge of Confucius's teachings on virtue, ritual, and order. This was a conquest not of swords and soldiers, but of minds and manuscripts. For nearly 2 millennia, the path to power, wealth, and prestige in the most advanced civilization on earth was through the words of a man who died thinking he was a failure. The code was no longer just a philosophy. It was the law, the curriculum, and the very soul of the Chinese state. Chapter 5. The Code in the 21st Century, after surviving for 2 millennia. The code faced its greatest test in the 20th century, was blamed for China's stagnation and weakness, and aggressively attacked during Mao's Cultural Revolution. What? It endured. Today, its influence is not only resurgent, but pervasive. Look no further than the world of business. The modern Chinese concept of guanxi is a direct descendant of the Confucian Code. Guanxi is the intricate network of personal relationships, mutual obligations, and trust that underpins commerce. A signed contract is often less important than the strength of the guanxi between the parties involved. It is a system built on the principles of Ren benevolence within the network and Li, the proper etiquette to maintain these relationships. The code's legacy is also visible in the immense value placed on education. The modern Gaokao, China's notoriously difficult college entrance exam, is the direct spiritual successor to the imperial examinations. The societal pressure to succeed academically is a reflection of the Confucian belief that learning and self-improvement are fundamental to a virtuous life and social mobility. The deep-seated respect for hierarchy and seniority, both in the family and in the corporate world, is a modern manifestation of Xiao. Even the state's rhetoric often frames its relationship with the people in Confucian terms, that of a benevolent, paternalistic authority guiding a populace that owes it respect and deference. The code Confucius designed has proven to be an incredibly adaptive piece of cultural software, one that continues to run quietly in the background of modern life, not just in China but across East Asia, from a determined scholar in an age of chaos to the architect of a civilization's soul. Confucius did not build a physical empire. He built an empire of the mind. He designed a code for human interaction that has shaped the fate of billions. This secret code is no conspiracy. It is the deep, underlying cultural grammar of virtue, ritual, and duty that he first articulated 2,500 years ago. Its resilience is a testament to its profound understanding of human nature and the need for social harmony. But this leaves us with a critical question for our time. In a world that increasingly values individual expression and disruption, can a modern society still benefit from such an ancient code? Or do these principles of order and deference ultimately limit human potential? The debate continues, a final, enduring legacy of the master who taught a nation how to think about itself.